Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 6 of the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship here from the virtual recreation of Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium. David Christie back on the mic. I managed to escape for 1 week only, but I couldn't help but come back in to join my good friend Sapello Merioli for another week of incredible esports action. Sapello, thank you so much for letting me escape for a week, but what did I miss last week at Donington?
Well, I hope I kept your seat warm enough for you. What you missed was something very surprising that's happened this season. We saw some of the biggest gaps we've seen this far in this championship. Donington proved to be the kind of track that kind of separated the drivers. You know, the guys that were really confident did really well. We saw a bit of difference in how the drivers went about it. We saw them settle a bit earlier than we usually do. You know, we've seen the last 10 minutes can be a bit frantic sometimes, but Donington separated. We had big gaps between 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. It had some close battles, but ultimately it was kind of the chilled race where if you were confident, you got yourself set up right, you kind of led and you could hold position.
Fantastic stuff. Sounds like I missed an awesome race in Spa. Really one of those tracks where you don't have anywhere to hide. But let's have a look at the championship. In 6th position, Giovanni Portio in 7th, Sasha Versner in 8th position, Cody Sherritt as well up into 9th position. We've seen Cody flying the flag for Genisus Esports all through the esports scene lately. Henry Meyer out there as well in 10th position, and then there's a run down to 15th position as well. And again, you know, just outside that 15th position, it's still all to play for, because you've got the likes of Ronaldo Bersma, you've also got Daniel de Matos Pruita, Wojtek Dvorak, who I was expecting to see much bigger things from this season, down there in 20th position, and Alexander Kuznetsov, who has found himself pretty much being the punching bag of the entire season just now. But again, it's all to play for with another championship here. Talking of the championship then, as I said, we've got another 7 rounds to go. If we can bring the calendar back up again and have another look at it. Obviously we're at halfway point then. Spa just now, 15th November. Then we're on to Nürburgring, Barcelona after that, over to the UK to Silverstone. Not my favourite track, I'll be honest. Suzuka will be an absolute banger, so will Monza, and then Watkins Glen I think will be absolute chaos. Out of all of those 7 tracks there, Tapello, what one kind of jumps out at you for the remaining races?
You know, every time we go into the season, I think the race to look out for changes every round, because we see these guys set up so differently and we see them do things so differently. They're confident here, they're less confident there. I think what I'm looking forward to is round 10 in Suzuka. It's a very technical track, and it's the kind of track where you need to find your rhythm, you need to be very confident and get your setup correct. So that has the potential to be a very good race. Monza's always a surprise. I always tell people it's a deceptive track. You know, the layout looks fairly simple, but when cars get on that track, drivers tend to be so close, the gaps tend to be minimal, and it's all about push. It tends to be a sprint race. Monza is one of the funniest races. It's never a marathon. That's a sprint. It's a 100-meter dash to the line.
I would say it's more like a 100-meter dash to turn 1, where you're either going to survive the race or it's done for the day on lap 1. But there is our calendar for the remainder of the season here for the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship. A stellar lineup as well. As we saw looking at that championship, it is just going to be a fantastic affair. So, over to the grid then. And it looks like we have got qualifying underway, as the car's just coming into the final corner here. That is Tariq Adam. Now, Tariq Adam doing a rather grand job there, Tapello, of having such a great start in the championship. If I remember rightly, what is he, about 4th position at the moment? Sorry, 3rd position at the moment. Luke Addison maybe being a little bit more consistent with his finishes just now, but you've got to ask, if Tariq hadn't missed that first round, I think he honestly could have been in second place at this point.
Yeah, look, it's all about consistency, and we've started to see that, right, with Tariq in the way he's picked up as the season's gone on from round 2 onwards. He's been very confident. He tries to downplay how confident it is. I've spoken to him a few times, and I've heard that there's a hint of confidence there, even though he tries to hide it. But Spa is one of those tracks, it's kind of how you separate yourself, and it's a very tricky track to set up for, because sector 1 and sector 3 are all about top speed, trim the wing. But then the problem is you have this really fast and really technical sector 2 that depends on the downforce of the car. So you have to make a compromise as the driver and how you want to set up this car. So that's why it always tends to give good racing, and we see someone on the grass there, but that's still alright. It's qualifying, shouldn't be too big of a problem. If that happens in the race, the stewards will be looking at that.
Yeah, they certainly will, and I think for all intents and purposes, usually it's a case of drivers pulling off the racing line and deciding to escape back to pits, immediately breaking any sort of realism that we try and bring into the esports. But it's qualified, it's the fastest way to do it, and it gains them extra time to get back to the pits and get back out there at the moment. George Boothby then with a 2:15.285, setting the timing screens alight just now. Tariq Adam in second place just now. George Boothby fight that out with Luke Whitehead. They really too have been knocking lumps out of each other all season, although we've not actually seen that manifest itself in any sort of physical way on track. It sounds a lot tighter than it actually has been. It's been a fairly respectful affair between those two, and that's great. But I'm an anarchist. I like seeing a little bit of chaos every now and again. So I am still praying for a little bit of a punch up between those two at some point in the near future. But 5 minutes, or just under 6 minutes left to go in qualifying. We're with Abe Santima just now. Now, if he goes and starts another lap here, it'd be great to see if we could go on board with Santima or one of the other cars here. Actually, here we go then, down into turn 1. Let's take it on board for a lap here of Spa as we jump into Luke Whitehead. So huge thank you to our broadcast producer for very quickly finding another car on a hot lap here. So Luke Whitehead gets round La Source then on the run down the hill. The car absolutely screaming up the gears on this Lamborghini here as it comes up towards Eau Rouge and Radion. Eau Rouge is the S section, Radion the top of the hill here. Comes over the bump, and then it is on to that long Kemmel Straight. Now he's got two cars just in front of him. This could be very bad for his qualifying lap here, because of course he's on a flying lap, and of course they move on to the race 9 because they might very well be on a hot lap as well. Onto the brakes into Les Combes. Then it's on into the right-hander here at Malmedy. You don't want to take too much of that curb on the inside. Unsettles the car and will send you off spinning around and around. On the brakes down into Pruel. Again, a really tight hairpin right-hander. The car wants to sweep away and wash away as the camber forces it as we go through Speaker's Corner. Left-hander, again, you can use a lot of the exit curb on the right-hand side there, perhaps more than you can in other games that would penalise you for that. A little bit of a mistake there coming through that double left-hander there at double gauche, and gets away with it. But I don't think this is going to be Luke Whitehead's fastest lap for just now. Again, a short run down into the section at Lefania. It's a right and then a left again, and again you have to be so patient getting back onto the throttle as then it's down into Campus. A long sweeping right-hander here again, but you're tempted to use even more of that left hand side than you are able to. But again, Luke doing a grand job of keeping that on the straight and narrow here just now. Then it's through Stavelot, and it's relatively straightforward. And I say relatively because you've got one monster corner that you have to worry about, and that is this one here, Blanchimont. Blink and you will miss it, or blink and you'll be into the wall on the right hand side there. Straight onto the brakes then, into the final chicane. You've got a car to try and comprehend, and that has absolutely destroyed this lap. I think that might have been Alexander in the Audi there. It has taken about 2/10, I think, off of his time. again, but he was already 0.5 of a second off of pole position. What's he do? Yeah, 2:17.4, so that lap is going absolutely nowhere. But 3:15 left to go in qualifying. George Boothby on pole here, Sapello, and Tariq Adam chasing him down there, just less than 1/10 of a second away.
Yes, again, we're seeing what we've been talking about this season so far, and that the gaps can be very small between these drivers. You've spoke about how clean they are with each other, but what we also need to pay attention to is how close they can get to each other during qualifying. And I think it's very interesting. Again, the drivers have been very on edge about this race, looking at the McLaren, saying they'd be very fast. And we're already seeing it, our top three are McLarens, and the gap between them isn't that big. So it's all about finding that confidence. This is I love saying confidence because it's what ultimately counts on tracks like these. Spa's that kind of track, as we've already seen. Some corners you really want to maximize your track limits, go as wide as you can. It sets up your line coming back into the entry of the next corner, and it's all about rhythm, especially in sector 2, as you take these fast corners like Pouan, like Stavilo, like Blanchimont. It's really about getting that confidence and finding your right racing line.
It certainly is, and I could not have put that any better myself, Tapello. So thank you very much for summing that up in a nutshell. But again, it's just, for me, it sums up so very well just how tight this championship is, and it's always great. I always argue whenever I'm doing, the esports broadcasts, the likes of the SimGrids or SRO or anything like that. I always say the community events are always where you're going to get the toughest and tightest racing, because everyone helps each other out. It's not like other championships where it's dog eat dog and everybody keeps the setups to themselves, and you've got there's much more of a community atmosphere. Obviously, with it being in the name, it's a community championship. Everybody's on Discord together, everybody's on track together in practice, sharing setups, talking about how to take corners, about what changes in the setup do. And again, it goes with this whole, as part of the Genisus Esports, it goes with that Kaizen ethos, that whole idea coming from that Japanese term, where it's that whole thing of execute, review, plan, execute, and it's just this constant circle of improving. And you see this, and I think that's why we're seeing in so many of the professional events, we're now seeing so many of the Genisus Esports drivers actually getting up there and really making a name for themselves here.
Spot on, Mr. Christie, spot on. And I've actually taken the time, as with these races, before we get into production, I tend to sit and listen to some of the guys going through practice, and just to hear, we've spoken about the community of this championship, and just to hear how these guys interact with each other, the information that they share with each other, how they're kind of giving each other tips, looking at their strengths, their weaknesses, and kind of helping each other. That's why they can be so close during the races, because they make sure that there's no man left behind. And I think it's such a great thing to see, and it's something that I've loved so far in this championship, is the sense of community that's there. As much as everyone is a competitor and everyone is looking to win something, but there's also the enjoyment of doing this with friends. And as we see the end of qualifying coming up, whoever's on their last lap should be the last lap. Still tight gaps there. We see Tariq Adam in second, just under 2/10 from George Boothby in first. Adam Santima looking comfortable in third, because as Christian Fenter is in the pits already, and Luke Whitehead as well. So I think we shouldn't be seeing more shocks, but stranger things have happened.
Well, as I'm on the verge of having a sneeze here, I think the one shock for me is our championship leader qualifying down there in P5 just now. So Luke Whitehead, who is leading this championship on 135 points at the moment, behind Abe Santima, behind Venter, behind Tariq Adam, and behind George Boothby. So that is going to be a hell of a comeback drive for Whitehead. And I'm not going to make it any more dramatic than it is, because we know he's got the pace and he's got the ability to do that. But again, when you look at who's around him, you've got Luke Harrison, you've got Cody Sherritt, you've got Lindrup as well. All of them very fast drivers. And again, to say, to prove how close this championship is and how close this community is, 11 cars here, Tariq, within a second here. But at the moment, George Boothby on pole position, and there you go. That is Venter now up into P5. So Luke Whitehead now down into P6. Can he go even further down right now?
See, this is exactly what we've been talking about. This championship is so close that the gaps in the points aren't really that major. You have one race where you slip up, or you're not on form, or it's a racetrack that you're not too confident in, and this starts to happen. But I think, starting on the front row might be a bit treacherous. If you survive the first corner, you're going to be sitting duck on the Camel Straight. It's a very long straight. The slipstream is very effective. So sometimes it actually can be advantageous to start on the second row, position 3, 4, 5 maybe. But unfortunately, that also carries the risk that the further you are down the pack, the more cars around you, the more risk of contact there is. So yes, it's a bit of a disappointment, but that's racing, and we'll see how they pan out, because again, we do have a 90-minute race, so there's a lot of opportunity to gain positions, but there's also a lot of opportunity to lose the race.
Yeah, for sure. And as we said, 90-minute race here with a mandatory pit stop, fixed refueling pit stop with a 20-minute window. So they do have to take fuel on board with that. But any second now, we'll be heading down to the track. We'll be able to take you through the grid of everyone that we have got on offer just now. But again, just a fantastic race that we've got coming up tonight. 90 minutes here at Spa-Francorchamps, that wonderful 4.35 mile circuit that is quintessential to any GT3 championship. It really is the home, the spiritual home of GT3 racing. Also, a very good evening to everyone that is on the YouTube chat tonight. Good evening to Shaba Mashigo, to Gareth Hawkins, to Genesis OG, Christian Deploy. Hang on, Christian, what? You're in YouTube chat, but you're also in the server. That is what you call multitasking, my friends. Congratulations on that one. And to Mavala, David Marioli out there on chat as well. But the transition goes, which means we are ready to head down to the grid then. So row 1 then is going to be George Boothby on pole position with Tariq Adam alongside in that McLaren. Row 2 is going to be Abe Santima in 3rd position with the lead Audi, Jack Alexander in the number 18. Christian Venter leads off row 3 in 5th position with Luke Whitehead alongside in the number 55 Lamborghini. And then row 4 is going to be Luke Harrison in the number 8 Ferrari alongside the fellow Ferrari of Cody Sherritt in the number 10. In row 5 is going to be Philippe Minard in the number 29 Lamborghini in 9th position. 10th position, Martin Lindrup in the 27 McLaren. On row number 6, Sasha Vassner in the 28 Mercedes, and then it's Henry Meyer in the number 6 Ferrari in 12th position. 13th position is Daniel De Matos Preto in the 21 Lamborghini, and in 14th position it's going to be Jimmy Holm rounding out row 7. Row 8 is going to be Ronaldo Boersma in the 22 Lamborghini in 15th position, and then 16th Nicolas Manuel alongside him in the 15 Ferrari. Row 9 is going to be Philippe Rieha in the 34 McLaren in 17th position. 18th position is going to be the 14 Ferrari of Sean Schutz. And then row 10 is Alexander Kuznetsov, hoping to make a dent in his season very shortly in the 24 Lamborghini. Sandro Van Sant is in the 26 McLaren alongside him in P20. Then towards the end of the grid then, P21 is going to be the 23 of Jaco Grubler in the McLaren. The Ferrari of Omar Khan is on 22nd. Mr. Kenny S is going to be in 23rd position, and then Philip Wares is in 24th position, as we get a beautiful locked shot here of the cars making their way down for their formation lap here. And again, just watching these cars here, Tapello, and this is it, this is crunch time now. All the preparation, all of the practice, all of the strategy that they had planned, all of the theory, it's now game time, and it's now all on these drivers here.
Yeah, and it's what we always talk about, right? It's that minute or that warm-up lap before the race starts where you're feeling confident. You kind of want to relax. You don't want to be thinking about everything too much. You just want to make sure that everything is set up correctly. You're confident enough. You're heating up your tires properly. You don't want to be thinking about what other guys are going to do. You need to be thinking about what you're going to do and how you're going to start your first lap. For sure,
as the cars making their way round into Les Combes then. as Tapello saying there, tyre management is going to be a critical factor here at Spa. It is a very, very intensive circuit. It's right in the middle of the day in virtual time here as well, 12:30. So the heat going to be rising in the air temperature, and also heat rising on the track temperature. That's going to affect the tyre pressures. That's going to affect the handling and the grip of the cars as well. And it's also going to affect with the light that they are going to have to kind of cope with. But again, I always liked, especially a Assetto Corsa Competizione, because it usually puts these long full formation laps on. And for me, when I've been behind the wheel here, Tapello, I liked it because it calms me down a little bit. It gives me a little second to breathe and get out of my own head and actually start focusing on the race ahead.
Yeah, I've always preferred to have, in some races you can turn off the warm-up lap, so to speak. I've always had it on. I think it helps me as well, just to get a feel for everything, just to relax, find your footing, and dare I say, just be comfortable in your seat, because you can be so tense during qualifying and trying to set a good time that this warm-up lap is your perfect time just to calm down, take a breath, slow down before everything gets manic one more time. And I think that the greatest thing, or it depends on how you look at it, is Spa-Francorchamps is such a long circuit. It's 7 kilometers a lap. The warm-up lap is so long that you will calm down, but if you're also stressed, you will stress even more. So it gives drivers a different opportunity just to find themselves. But trust me, once the racing gets going on this circuit, we are in for a ride.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, an unfortunate announcement. Eskom has claimed its first victim tonight. Giovanni Porto has been taken out by load shedding and internet issues as well, so we send our condolences to him. He's sending on his. Good luck to all of the Genisus boys out there. So again, we will forward those on for you as well. But thanks for joining us in the YouTube chat as well here, Giovanni. And I've got to be honest, as a Scottish person, Tapello, I'm quite proud that I know the meaning of the Eskom curse.
Listen, we thought it was a local thing, but if we're teaching it to you guys internationally, then I think that's how we spread the South African love. It's not something we'd love to be known for, but unfortunately it is a reality this side. And yeah, it always happens when you least expect it. So unfortunate, but that's what we have to live with.
Oh, I've just noticed it's claimed a second victim. Actually, our first victim is Christian Deploy. I didn't even notice that comment in the chat, so we'll have a little fun on that as well. But a huge thank you to both those drivers for still coming and supporting the channel and the fellow drivers tonight. Anyway, enough of the hijinks and hilarity as we get ready to go racing here at Spa. Now, this is the bane of my existence as a commentator, because if you believe the amount of times, ladies and gentlemen, as they round that final chicane and I start ramping up the excitement because they're ready to go, and then I remember that the start line is actually round the other side of the hill here, so they do go through La Source and then run down. And I think this might actually be the first broadcast in which I actually remembered before getting all hyped up here, so I have learned my lesson. But they do come into La Source then, so this technically counts as the start of the race as they come down here. So we are ready. But here we go then. Round 6 of the Genisus Kaizen Esports Championship here at Spa. George Boothby on pole position, Tariq Adam in second place. They are poised, waiting to go any second. They're going to be getting that green flag. And away we go racing. Great job there from George Boothby, but an even better run from Tariq Adam. Can he get the run through the side here? Everybody going through side by side up the hill here. We've got a car off on the inside. I believe that might have been Luke Addison or Cody Sherritt there. But again, coming up through the back stretch here just now, it's all looking very, very clean and clear. You've got Weaver about in the background there. That's Luke Whitehead trying to get himself up. Tariq Adam as well, trying to go around the outside as they come into Lecombe. But George Boothby still in the lead of this race, as we see Alexander getting a 5-second penalty there. We'll confirm what that is for very, very shortly just now. But again, off into the sunset. George Boothby is absolutely away with this. And Abe Santima here, Tariq, already up into second place. Tariq Adam going down into third. We've got a yellow flag just off in the background there. That looks like it's Manuel that's coming into some issues here. But again, a very, very fast start to this race. You're going to have a move on the outside. I believe that might be Whitehead trying to have a little look there as well. Trying to go round the outside of Double Gulch, but can't quite make that happen. He's in between a rock and a hard place. He's just ahead of Alexander. That Audi just behind him there at the moment, so he's up to P4 already. The start that he wanted is already underway, and again, some more chaos and carnage at the back there. That is the number 27 that's been caught out there. That is Martin Lindrup now, who is straggling at the back of the field, so McLaren having a bit of an issue through that first stage of the opening lap here as they come through the right-hander at Campus, the right-hander at Stavolo, but for all intents and purposes, a fantastic opening lap to Pello.
Definitely, and this is what I was talking about, where it could be advantageous not to be on the front row, as you're in. Sometimes when you're within traffic, especially down the Kemmel Straight, it's such a long straight, the slipstream works in your favor, and we've already seen that for the likes of Adam Santima, who was able to make up a few positions. I think we've got contact just coming into the final bus stop chicane there. No harm, no foul, as they say in racing, and they continue on. So yes, it's all about setting yourself up as you come into Los Osos here. It's all about getting that braking point correct. Take the corner, and there's a spin right there. The Audi of Alexander has taken a spin. That is really, really unfortunate. He's already sitting with a 5-second penalty, and now he's taken a spin coming out of Los Osos. That is disastrous for this race, where everyone is still bunched up together.
Yeah, for sure. That is going to be a very, very scary moment for Luke Addison, because that is now twice in the space of 3 corners that he has caused contact with that Audi of Jack Alexander. Outbroke himself into that final chicane there, and I get the feeling that Jack Alexander is pulling off to the side. He is done and dusted. And I hate to say it, but you can imagine and you can understand why when you feel like a day is not going your way at all. And it also looks like we've got the number 23 with a spin at the top of Radion as well. So a lot of cars getting caught out very, very early. So Jaco Grubler in that 23 McLaren also falling foul at the top of Radion. Just now at the front of the field though, George Boothby in the lead of this 90-minute race here at Spa. Abe Santima in second place, so it's a McLaren 1-2-3 at the moment. Tariq Adam rounding out that podium just now, 0.8 of a second behind Santima, but Boothby already off like a scalded cat just now, as Luke Whitehead trying to chase down this top 3 at the moment. You can see him just on the tail there of Tariq Adam. So we go on board then through the remaining section of the circuit. This is coming through Lafania, then into Campus just now, then it's the right-hander, and again, as we go through Campus, you get an idea of the speed that these cars carrying through with them just now, but it feels like a procession when you're on board with them. It feels just very, very mundane and very, very ordinary, but I tell you what, coming through at Blanchimont here at high speeds, it's anything but mundane and ordinary just now. Tariq Adam lining up a move on the Abe Santima, late on the brakes, can't quite do anything with that just now, but again, he's going to have to watch out, because Luke Whitehead now is going to be poised and waiting to go. We've got another yellow flag, and I think another retirement from this race then. That was the number 35, I believe it was, of Mr. Kenny S that has retired from the race, so he is done and dusted as well, and we are down to just 23 cars left in this race to Pello.
Yeah, of course, and Spa is proving to be quite the spectacle, you know. We're only 5 minutes into this race and we're already seeing retirements. We've already seen Eskom strike again. So it seems like it's going to be a good race going forward. I hope we can keep as many of these drivers in this race as possible, because the longer these stints go on, the more impressive this race is going to be. And as we can see already, some gaps starting to open, but some cars are still very, very close with each other, and that's all you need sometimes. Just thinking about braking 2 meters later than the guy in front of you, and it could be possible for an overtake. But George Boothby doing really, really well, starting the race very confident. He's already 1.8 seconds ahead of Adam Santima. That's how you start a race. That's how you maintain position.
Absolutely, and it's a brilliant gap to have opened up already. What I would say in Abe Santima's defence is that gap is stabilised at 1.8 seconds. It hasn't gotten any worse since that was all pulled out on lap 1 here. My concern is that if Luke Whitehead gets ahead of Adam and ahead of Santima, then he will be on the warpath trying to catch down George Boothby just now. What I also noticed is that the number 34 car of Philippe Riha, the McLaren, getting a 10-second penalty there, so I fear that might have been the first of our steward awarded penalties. I also noticed that he had a yellow flag, so he had a spin at the top of Radion as well. It timed exactly when he got that news through, so I wondered if he was in a little bit of shock. We also mentioned that we lost one of our cars earlier on there, and that was Alexander, who retired from the race there. It turned out that Jack Alexander actually getting a 5-second penalty for a qualifying infringement. I'll try and get a better idea of what actually happened during qualifying, but again, there we go, we've got another penalty coming in there for the 27 just now of Martin Lindrup. That was another driver who had brought out a yellow flag, so I wonder if those have brought out contact with other drivers here. And again, it's just going to be so fascinating to see how penalties to Pello play a factor in this race here.
Yeah, of course. And unfortunately, you missed last week's race where some of the guys that had penalties did fairly well for their positions. They didn't lose that much time. They could maintain the pace on track. So look, Spa's a very tricky circuit. It's a long circuit and we've got a 90-minute race. So a penalty might not be the worst thing, but it's all about keeping that race pace up so that eventually when you serve this penalty during your pit stop, it's not as disastrous as it can be. But as we've spoken about, if you look at the gap right in front, George Boothby is getting some pace again out of that McLaren as the gap has extended to 2.2 seconds now. But that's the thing with this kind of circuit. It's all about who can get confident first, and that's how you build the gap, and that's how you hold position. Interesting enough, we've seen Tariq Adam be very good in defending so far this season. He's very confident on the brakes, which is something we've seen with him in the way his driving style is very confident on the brakes, and he's very good on corner exit. So he seems to have gained on Luke Whitehead as well. He's 9/10 of a second ahead. So is that the characteristics of Tariq Adams driving coming to the fore again and how he can defend position? It's still too early into the race, so I don't know how long he can keep this up, but his defense has been very stellar so far this season, David.
I could not agree with you more, Tapello. I think that the thing that I would say is, having not come across Tariq's name before coming into this championship, he is most definitely not there by accident. He is not a place filler in any way whatsoever. That boy is pure talent right now, able to mix it and thoroughly deserving such a high position in the standings. Third place right now, as we're on board with Sasha Vassner, who actually had a penalty awarded to somebody that hit into him just earlier on. It was actually the 27 that hit into him of Lindrup, so that's why they've got the 10-second penalty. But also noticing there a 10-second penalty for Luke Addison, who is in 5th position now, so that's going to come across him when he jumped into the pit lane, and that's almost certainly, I would imagine there, Tapello, going to take him out of the top 10 very briefly.
Yeah, for sure. I think the top 10 is still tight enough that kind of penalty can be disastrous at that. And if you can see, already Cody Sharrett is within 0.8 of a second of Luke Addison, so that 10-second penalty is disastrous if he wants to maintain a position within that top 10. As we see here, Vassner coming up into Eau Rouge onto the Camel Straight. Is he close enough to try and move towards the end? Let's see how he picks up the slipstream, because the slipstream can be very effective on the circuit, and it's all about getting in there. And he's going into the inside, trying for a move on the brakes. He's down the inside. Excellent move. Well done, well judged. Beautiful driving right there.
Yeah, Daniel de Matos Preto really didn't do much in the way of stopping that move happening there. Sasha Vassner with the aggression sent it up the inside into Lecombe, and that was a beautiful, beautiful move to take P10 and jump into that top 10 just now. Also looking further down the order here, I have a little bit of an update actually from one of our championship organisers, Gareth Hawkins there, giving us an idea on what exactly happened with that penalty with Jack Alexander. We said that it was a qualifying infringement. I kind of feel ashamed to even mention what he did, but you know what you did, Jack. That just sounds brutal. What happened, and I'm not even going to make any further comment on that one. But shame on you, my friend. Shame on you. Luke Addison under pressure right now from a man that Genisus Esports is going to have quite a lot of interest in it, safe to say. Cody Sherritt, their very own number 10 in the Ferrari, on the heels of Luke Addison right now. And again, another name that is proven that he is definitely earning his spots on the table here in the championship for the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship. Through the final corner then, they come through that chicane, and gaining is Cody Sherritt right now. We've already somehow, I've got no idea how, almost done 15 minutes of this 90-minute race here. So again, drivers now at that point that we always say here, Tapello, where they get that first 10-15 minutes under their belt, they can relax a little bit. And when I say relax, I don't mean like, oh, we can just take it easy, as Philippe Minard under real pressure here from that's Venter in the McLaren, trying to make a move there and gets it done. So Venter does get that 7th position there. We caught the tail end of it. That Lamborghini really having no answer. This actually brings up another point here, because we're seeing Luke Whitehead kind of fall back as well. Minard drop back. Coming into this race here, Tapello, we were told that the McLarens and the Lamborghinis were the ones to watch here. But for me, it seems to be the McLarens that are rising to the top and the Lamborghinis that are slowly falling down.
Yes, for sure. For right now, it actually looks like a lot of the McLarens have the advantage in race pace, as you could see there in the way that Venter set up that move even before we got into the usual, overtake point of trying to get into the slipstream just after Eau Rouge as you go down the Kemmel Straight. So setting up that kind of move shows that you have an advantage in pace and you have a greater level of confidence in the car. I think it's looking well. It was mentioned in the post-race interviews we did last week as well that a lot of the drivers were fearful in the pace potential of the McLarens in this particular race. It's a track that tends to suit them, and I think we're seeing that as well. As you can see now, the gaps are getting a bit tricky now, because what I'm trying to think is, if you're Luke Addison, what do? You still have the 10-second penalty. Is it worth defending, because ultimately you're moving slower by trying to defend, or is it worth just letting Christian Venter just go past you, and then you can just try and maintain race pace? Because I think we've had a position swap. Yes, Cody Sherritt is now ahead of Luke Addison as well, so Luke Addison has fallen down to 6th position.
Yeah, and again, that it just seems to be par for the course, unfortunately, with Luke Addison. His day-to-day not really going so well just now. Cody Sherritt getting that position done. We saw it in a similar fashion to Venter getting past Philippe Minard there. So again, I think you're 100% right there. There will be strategy in a certain sense to that. He will know that Cody Sherritt is maybe a little bit faster than him, and he would likely lose much more time than if he was to just let it go and deal with it as it comes by on the track here. But again, strategy, one of those things that it's very difficult to explain to people that haven't been behind the wheel during one of these mini endurance races. And it doesn't sound like an endurance race with it only being an hour and a half, but it is still one you have to consider that way for strategy in terms of the way that you approach this. In terms of the pit window, you've got a 20-minute pit window that you are to take your pit stop and you have to refuel. But that's also when you're going to serve your penalty. Those 10-second penalties, that's 10 seconds held in the pit box before you actually get any work done on your car. So that's when it affects you. So if you want to stay out late, you might have a chance to get some clean laps in and blaze in some really fast times, which is what I'd be tempted to do, because by that point you're going to be down to a light fuel load. Your tyres are going to be hopefully at their optimum temperature. You're going to be 45 minutes into the race or 50 minutes or whatever, and they're not going to be burned out. They're not going to have the best life on them, but you're certainly going to be able to set some really fast laps, and that might undo some of the damage with the penalty. And I think that's what to look out for during the remainder of the race. Abe Santima, the hold that he was able to have over George Boothby, keeping that gap at 1.8 seconds, well, that's kind of fallen by the wayside, unfortunately. George Boothby speed being released into the ether, and he is now scampered off 3.6 seconds up to the leads, and he is now looking that he will likely not be caught at this point in time, barring coming across any traffic. So it can change, it likely will change, but at the moment he's doing everything that he needs to do just now. Tariq Adam in that third position, Luke Whitehead in fourth, Cody Sherritt in fifth, Luke Addison in sixth position, Christian Venter in seventh position. Then you've got Philip Benar in 8th position, Holm in 9th, Jimmy Holm, the homing missile, we haven't even mentioned him tonight, and then Sasha Vassner down in P10 just now. But yeah, looking at that top 10, no real surprises in there, I've got to be honest with you. I am a little bit surprised that that Lamborghini of Luke Whitehead wasn't able to charge through as much, but I think maybe in championship wise, anything in the top 5 is still good points for him, Tapello.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what we're going to see. Because like you've said, I just want to go back. Like you've said, it's all about strategy in these kind of races. And for people that aren't really familiar with online esports, 90 minutes is a really, really long time for this race, because generally races usually last for about 20 minutes. So 20 minutes is short. So in a 90-minute race, you're thinking about so many things, about how you need to drive, how you need to conserve tires, how you need to set up moves, because it's, as we always say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You don't want to risk contact, you don't want to risk a penalty, you don't want to risk damage. So a lot of these drivers are already, look, these guys are so good, they are world class. They're already thinking about the end of the stint. They're not thinking about what they're doing now. They're thinking about how they're setting up their pit window. When are they going to pit? How are they going to pit? Do they pit at the beginning of the pit window? Do they pit at the end? Because they want to set up that second stint and how they can maximize on the lighter fuel load, fresher tires, and just push towards the end.
Yeah, and again, those are things that we can talk about as commentators, but realistically, Tapello, we've got no idea. Just as much as the audience at home, I mean, from experience, we can, think about what we've seen. But 9 times out of 10, we often get quite surprised, don't we, with what we actually see unfold. But what is not surprising is this little fight for 13th and 14th position here, because this is Nicholas Manuel for Genisus Esports, right on to the back of Alexander Kuznetsov in that 24 Lamborghini. Now, I'm delighted to see Kuznetsov in 13th position. It has been a horrid season for Alexander. He has found himself at the centre of every single Barney, every single bit of contact that's going on, as that was well wide through Blanchimont there for Nicholas Manuel. And the other thing with that is that Pello, he's only going to get away with that a certain amount of times, because with this little Corsa Competizione, you get 3 warnings and then you get an automatic drive-through penalty.
Yeah, and that's something you have to consider, especially when you're following this close. Like we've always said, the setup for this circuit is so tricky, because you have sectors in the circuit where being this close is actually to your advantage. You can use the slipstream, you can get closer and probably set up an overtake. But unfortunately, you also have very aero-dependent corners where if you're this close, you're going to suffer, you're going to lose downforce, you're going to go wide. So you kind of need to drive with that also in your mind. You see, as they come up here, Nicholas Manuel will be loving being this close. He'll get the slipstream. You can already see he's gained so much coming out of Radion, going into the Kemmel Straight. For sure, he's going to go for a move in the braking zone for the Lake Home chicane. Let's see, he goes around the outside. Brilliant driving from Kuznetsov, just braking so late so he can maintain the speed going into the Lake Home chicane. So this is what's going to happen. You see now, he might try and think about pulling back, because sector 2 is really aero dependent, and he will suffer if he tries to follow this close through those fast and aero heavy corners.
Oh, that was a mistake though from Kuznetsov.
Oh, that was a mistake, and then we go for the move.
Yep. It's always the way, you're watching it and you think, oh, that's a masterful display of defence, and then he goes and does something like that. But a very easy mistake there, just a little bit too early on the accelerator there, the car twitching with oversteer, and that's cost a lot of time. And look at this, that I believe is going to be Philippe Riha trying to get position, jumps up on the inside, and I wonder actually, there's something definitely not right with that Lamborghini just now. Just watching the way that was twitching, I wonder if he's overcooked the tyres a little bit just now. Maybe he's overheated a little bit, or their two pressures a little bit off just now, but definitely that car is not up to proper speed just now. We saw how much pace that he lost there, not just to Manuel, but also to Reha as well. He's going to have to watch out because he's got Martin Lindrup who's going to try and take that position. So that shows you how quickly things can go horribly wrong here at Spa, fighting for 13th position, and then you end the lap in P16 just now as Luke Addison down into that 6th position just now. I'm just keeping an eye on him. He's falling away as well in that Ferrari. But again, with the pace advantage that I thought the McLarens had, I was not expecting that to go down so quickly. So Lindrup not able to take that just yet, but here comes the fight for P2 then. Tariq Adam onto the back of Abe Santima, and this could be a very, very spicy affair. Some huge points on offer potentially here for Tariq Adam if he can pinch this position away as they come down the hill towards that right-hander then at Bruel. Tucks it in nice and early, a little bit too much speed taken in from Tariq, but again, he might have a different plan, so many different lines going through that corner there, but it did look like Abe Santima had the much better run out of that corner, and again, you can see now, starting to open that gap ever so slightly. It will all change when they come down into the straightaway section towards Cours Paul Frere, and then in towards Blanchimont, but for just now, although the advantage is with Abe Santima at the moment. An hour and 8 minutes left to go in this race here, round 6 of the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship here at Spa-Francorchamps. Dave Christie and Tapelo Merioli in the commentary box with you tonight, and it is fantastic for myself to be here after having a little week's holiday to get back to some of the best action that we have around here, some of the biggest names in sim racing taking part, and as I said, just a great all-round ethos to be part of as well. If you do fancy getting part of this and becoming part of the community here, head over to genesisextreme.com and get yourself the link to the Discord from there. Jump on board and come and say hello to everyone here. I promise we don't bite, apart from Friday nights when it's pretty much a free-for-all. Joking aside though, Santima here to Tapelo, I think that it's only going to be a matter of time. You know, looking at Tariq Adam, he's not the type of driver, from my experience, to make these mad dive bombs, these you know, really outrageous moves. He just ratchets up that pressure slowly, lap by lap, until the person in front either crumbles from the pressure, or he's able to finally just get that move done.
Yeah, we've actually we've spoken about this before, actually, that he seems very measured in how he drives, and we've seen him being very measured in his defense. So now we want to see how that translates into attack. But you're right, he's never been the kind of guy to go for a dive bomb. He puts the pressure and kind of relies on the driver in front feeling the pressure and making the mistakes. You know, as we saw already with the Lamborghini of Philip Menard, sometimes you miss a braking zone because you have pressure. You know, we saw it with Kuznetsov as well. He missed his braking zone, he went too deep, he put too much power as he on corner exit, the rear twitches. So that might be what Tariq Adam is looking for here with Adam Santima, just to put that much pressure on him, have him make that mistake on corner exit or corner entry, and just open up the corner for him to just sneak through in the inside and hold that position. Because what we know so far in this championship, Tariq Adam is very good when he gets in front. So the key here for Adam Santima is not to allow Tariq Adam to get in front, because Tariq Adam is very good at maintaining position and defending his lead. Absolutely is. And again, it's a question of how much pressure can Abe Santima withhold. That is what we're going to be watching out here over the remaining 65 minutes of this race. Just on the YouTube chat here, good evening to Sandro Van Sand, who has apologised. He said that he has got too much damage on the car and has had to call it a night. Sandro, thank you very much for taking part. It's always a pleasure seeing you out there on track as well, buddy. As it looks like we've also, I believe, that might have actually been, I think we've got Omar Khan either into the pits or retiring from the race, but into the pits as well. Philip Vayers is into the pits as well. So again, far too early for that enforced pit stop. You get the feeling that these are some issues
that have befallen these drivers at such an early stage of the race. And Sapel, getting an instant or some sort of damage that forces you to go into the pit lane, I mean, that is a huge hole in your race, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such a terrible way to have to give up on the race, and look, I've spoken to some of these drivers. We know how confident they are, but we also know how big of a competitor each driver is. So something like that damage that you can't really recover from, and I think it's worth mentioning to the people that are watching here, as we try and grow this community, to try and make them understand what damage is like. When you have damage on a car, especially in a racing scenario, is everything just doesn't want to work the way you want it to. So you're slower on acceleration. You're not braking in a straight line. The car may be pulling in one direction on the straights. It makes it such a difficult thing to drive. You don't have the pace anymore. And if you cannot fix it, sometimes it's so bad that there's really nothing you can do about damage. So as you see, when we have retirees saying there's just too much damage, they've reached that point where there's really nothing they can do, and there we say the car is undrivable at that point, and that's why you tend to see retirees, because of damage. But as we see here, a very interesting battle between the two McLarens of Lundrup and Raiha. It's that we know these cars are equally matched, so it's all about now, where can you find your difference? Where can you find your strength as a driver? Are you better in braking? Are you better in corner exits? Can you set up a move, or can you force your opponent to make a mistake, David? What would you do in this kind of situations? What would your thinking be as you would undertake this race with an hour still to go, a mandatory pit stop in the back of your mind? How would you go about it?
Attack. But then that's usually because I end up into the nearest pole, and I mean literally into the nearest fence 2 laps later. So I'm not sure how much that advice is going to have any bearing on the race whatsoever. But yeah, it's what I tend to do. If I'm behind the car, I tend to just sort of sit in behind until I can gauge, am I faster than the car in front? If I've caught it up, then very likely yes, because we've heard that it's such a cliche at this point. It's one thing catching the car in front, it's another passing it. So again, if I'm able to do so safely, I will give it a go, and I will properly send it. As for going back to our guys that have retired, unfortunately, I like to pretend that I am a mature, responsible adult. I am the saltiest MF when it comes to sim racing, and if I get myself in any instance whatsoever, I'm in VR, that headset is getting ripped off. It's all F4 and who's that? That's off in the background. That's the number 8, Luke Harrison. It's a bad day from bad to worse, and that's a horrible position for him to be in. Stranded in the middle of the track, gets himself away again. But Luke Harrison from the middle of nowhere, that is the most unusual place to have an accident. I have never in my life seen a car, and it looked like it was completely by himself.
I don't think I've seen a spin at that point. Yes, you see it earlier as you go through Aruj and Radion coming out, but he was so far ahead from the crux, from the pinch point of that corner. It's a weird one. It's a really weird one, and I'm sure as a driver he's so confused at what happened there, and that kind of kills your confidence. That is such a confidence sapping a moment in a race like this. He still knows that he's got the 10-second penalty to serve, and now he's spun. Actually, he also got very lucky that he was not picked up by another driver, because then he would have a lot of damage. So silver linings, I guess, but that is one of the weirdest incidents I've ever seen at Spa, especially at that point.
Yeah, we'll have to see if we can get a replay of that. That was absolutely wild. But Luke Harrison, our 4th place driver in the championship so far, has pretty much defined his drop week this week. I mean, he might be able to recover from that, but you've got to say, with a 10-second penalty on top of that, I think he's going to struggle to finish anywhere inside the top 10 at the end of this race, especially with the fact there's only 60 minutes left to go now. But that was a huge moment, possibly one of the many championship defining moments that we have going to have across this season. As we go back to Tariq Adams, still back on hunt for Abe Santima. Santima as much as we've sung the praises of Tariq Adam and how he belongs in his place in the championship, let's not forget Abe Santiba here is in 5th position in the championship. So, these are two very, very worthy adversaries right now, going for it in a very, very measured way. Abe clearly shown that he can handle, Tapelo, all of the pressure that Tariq putting on him right now. But going back to bringing in another point we made earlier about, we keep going on about the community aspect of this. I always find in community races there's a much, much deeper sense of respectful driving across all of the drivers in this. Doesn't matter if you're on the same team or if you're new to the championship. There seems to be like this really extra sense of care that you take with all of the drivers, as we are quickly seeing Ronaldo Bersma having a look up the inside.
Yeah, you're right, David, and you're right. In community races, what I've also started to realize as well is, as much as they're competitors, but it's the community side that tends to trump the competition side of everything. There's a lot of prizes up for grabs. We know there's a cash prize at the end for the championship winner, but there's also the incentive of winning racing gear. I think anyone who completes 8 of the 12 races can choose between a sim wheel or a pedal set. So there's a lot of incentive actually to be very competitive. But it's all about community. It's all about doing this with friends. You enjoy it. So people don't need to fight that hard for it. They respect each other, and that's what we've seen so far this championship as well. There's a lot of respect between the drivers. There's a lot of admiration as well. So it becomes a very, very nice thing for us to watch as commentators. But trust me when I tell you, these guys are super competitive. And if there is these tiniest bits of a gap to go for a move, they will do it. But they will do it very respectfully to the other drivers as well.
Yeah, and just to kind of drill down on that point, I guess an example of that is the voice chat aspect of this. What you'll normally find is that they'll all race in their separate channels, and then at the end of the race, you'll just hear a cacophony of laughing and folks showing how much they enjoyed the race. And always what I find is the first thing you hear is drivers apologising to other drivers for incidents that might have happened throughout the race, or anything that's gone wrong, or if they feel like they were out of order for something. It's usually, oh, I'm so sorry about that. And again, if somebody that commentates on kind of some of the huge professional events, it's so refreshing to see that. I love hearing that, because this is what makes a driver want to come back week in, week out, and be part of the community, be part of this thing. Whether you're, an alien racer or somebody that's just got the wheel for, you've just got the wheel and the game, and you're just starting out and things like that. That sort of attitude, that sort of feeling and that camaraderie, that is what makes championships work so well. And I think they've absolutely hit onto a blinder here with the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship. So as I said again, if you do fancy getting involved in future championships, get over to the Discord, get yourself part of the community, go and join them for some of the fun races that they do, and be part of history. But 56 minutes left to go in this round 6 here. George Boothby now 5.8 seconds ahead of second place Abe Santiba. I think he is a little bit more concerned with the car in his mirrors at the moment. Tariq Adam in third position, 4/10 of a second off of the back wing of that McLaren. Luke Whitehead is continuing his recovery drive from qualifying in P6 at the moment. He's up to P4, but realistically, the pace of that Lamborghini, I am questioning whether he is able to do anything more than that. 6 seconds behind as we head down into the final 2/3 of the race. Cody Sherritt from Genisus Esports, he is also up into P5 as well. Christian Venter in 6th position in that 16 McLaren. And then you've got Philippe Minard getting that position done and taken away from him by Venter there for that fight. He's up to P7. And Jimmy Holm, the homing missile, who yet again I can't believe we've not actually seen him all race so far. But we will make sure to make up for that in the final 2/3 of the race. He's down in 8th position ahead of Luke Addison, recovering out of that spin. Actually, there he is. Let's take a minute to only for that team name. That is the best team name I think I've come across. We've seen some rather amusing ones, but homing missile. Thankfully, this race he's not actually lived up to his name tonight, Tapelo.
Has he ever lived up to his name? Because I've been in the chats with some of I've been in the chats with some of the drivers, and they kind of make a slight threat that you'll see someone dive bomb someone, and you'll see some massive damage. But they never do. They never do. Maybe they're trying to wind me up, or they've disappointed me this far. But you're right. It's such a pleasure to see the community side of everything, and I said this in my first broadcast as well. I'm new to the community as well, so to come in and be welcomed, and just to see how nice everyone is, and just how we're all joined by this love of racing, by this passion for esports. It's amazing to see, as we see cars from the Genisus racing team. Look, this has been going on for a while, actually, between Buzma and Meyer, trying to get that edge, and this is what we've been talking about. The McLaren is so far ahead, but the Lamborghini and the Ferrari seem to be fairly closely matched with each other, and in a situation like that, then it's all about what the driver can do to try and get that advantage there, David.
To some hardcore Genisus Esports on Genisus Esports action going on here, the Ferrari versus Lamborghini. And I was going to say, I was wondering if the car of Henry Meyer there, looking decidedly second hand there on the front of it, but then I just realised that is that beautiful, in air quotations, the brand new Ferrari here on Assetto Corsa Competizione. What I do love is that Genisus Esports logo proudly flying the South African flag on that front bumper. Of course, Genisus Esports community, and I guess a team, really centred around South Africa. And Tapelo, as a South African, I mean, what's it like having that flag flown on an international stage?
It's one of the best feelings ever. And if you're on social media right now, I think everyone has started to notice South Africa is currently going through a purple patch. We're currently winning everything. We've just won the World Cup. We're playing the semi-finals of the Cricket World Cup tomorrow as well. So it seems like everything is working out for South Africa. Let's hope that it continues. But it's such a lovely thing as we see the pit window open, and we see Maya going into the pits for his mandatory pit stop. So now the strategies that we've spoken about are coming into play, where now drivers are going to decide, do I take my pit stop as early as possible, or do I run this first stint longer, take my pit stop towards the end of the pit window, and then try and push on my last stint. But yes, as a South African, it's amazing to see, esports is not that developed in South Africa. There are people that are passionate about it, but I found myself having to explain what it is I do on these Wednesday nights, what it is I'm talking about. And that's why championships like the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship are so important, from a perspective of awareness, from a perspective of understanding, but most importantly, from a perspective of building the love and admiration for esports. This is important. It's great to see your flag on a car. It's great to see a guy racing that you grew up with, you probably went to the same schools. It's so important to build the sport, build the admiration, and it can only get better and better from here onward.
Absolutely agree, and as somebody that's looking to move over to South Africa as well, I've got a very keen interest on how that all develops over there. You've got some amazing talent over there in South Africa doing a wonderful job of educating about that esports rise, and we're seeing some huge growth within the industry over there in South Africa. So on a completely different level, one of my favourite games is Valorant, an FPS game, and I absolutely love it. Both myself and my partner, who is from South Africa, play it regularly, and just within the past month they've announced that they've got matchmaking servers now live over there in South Africa, which is a huge deal for the professional esports community as well. But again, just shows you how quickly things are establishing themselves over there. And for example, they're in major cities like London, Amsterdam, Berlin. So all of the sort of key cities that you would associate with, say, like Europe and things like that. I'll come back to that in a second, because Martin Lindrop trying to make a move around the outside of Manuel. Is it going to be a peek into the pit stop for either of them? No, it's not. The battle continues. But yeah, point being, great to see South Africa, establishing itself very quickly and very firmly on the esports map. an incredible amount of talent. We know how much passion for everything that South Africa takes part in, and we see the love and the support is absolutely wild. And I can't wait for the day when we get in either Joburg or Cape Town, we get proper worldwide esports events in a stadium, 10,000 fans filling it and going absolutely crazy to Pello. I think that's going to be an amazing, amazing day.
I'll tell you one thing, I'll definitely be there. As we see Martin Lundrup getting a fantastic exit out of Radion. We see the slipstream working. He's on the brakes. Is he ahead? No. He's not ahead. Oh, and then we have a spin right there from Manuel. Oh, that's really unfortunate. No contact there. He just lost it going on the brakes. Tried to maximize his entry speed. And that's the unfortunate thing sometimes when you're defending, is that you can defend a bit too far. Martin Lundrup will be happy about that. That's an easy position gain for him. He just needs to maintain his pace. So now we're starting to see overtakes. We're starting to see drivers push to the limits. That's what we've been saying is going to come up in this race as we get deeper into these stints. And yeah, that's the unfortunate part. Sometimes you push a bit.
For sure. As that was almost identical as what we saw with Abe Santima and Tariq
and that's
Adam.
The consequence of it.
The pressure that was being applied there, we thought that was something that was going to happen as Abe Santima does come into pit lane, so that hands second place over to Tariq Adam. It didn't quite happen that way, but that's a proper symptom of when you apply that pressure, that vice-like pressure, and you're just twisting it, squeezing it harder and harder, and something has got to break, and that's exactly what happened there with Manuel losing that position. The only silver lining out of that is he will very likely almost immediately get that position back, because with 15 minutes left to go in the pit window, we have only got 2 cars that have completed their pit stop, although we've got many more in the pits now. But again, showing that they are wanting to leave that pit stop till later, till possibly 5 minutes to go or something like that before they head in. And Abe Santima, the first of the top 5 to blink. But at the moment, it's still George Boothby then, now 7 seconds ahead of Tariq Adam, who inherits that second place. Luke Whitehead now up into P3, but again will drop down once the pit stops, you would imagine, are complete. Cody Sherritt is in 4th position, Christian Fenter into 5th position, Jimmy Holm in 6th there, and then it's Abe Santima will come out the pits. We'll see where he eventually turns out. Luke Addison is in there as well, Sasha Vassner up in the P9, and then moving a little bit further up is Martin Lundrup. So 45 minutes left to go. Somehow, just like that, Tapello, we have magically done half of this race. I've got no idea how that's happened. It's just flown by tonight. I think the drivers will be liking the fact, in one sense, that it's flown by, it's gone by very quickly. But as awesome as that is, that now means you've only got half the race left in which you can try and pull your moves and make that master strategy work. And what we're seeing is that the chances for overtaking on track are very few and far between here now.
Yes, and I think that's where a race like this gets overly technical. You start to see the gaps develop between the drivers, and what happens is when you start to see a gap develop, there's 2 trains of thoughts that usually go through a driver's mind in a situation like this. It's either you have to push harder to try and close that gap, or you try and relax and maintain your position, as we see Tariq Adam finally going for his pit stop from 2nd. But what usually happens is exactly that. It's either you push or you maintain position. Now, the dangers of that is if you push, you can push too hard, you can make mistakes, track limits, penalties, a spin, and stuff like that. So, like we've spoken about throughout this championship, the thing that these drivers do so well more often than not is just to maintain their mental position, maintain their composure, and just drive. And sometimes that's what you need to do in racing. You just need to drive and let the race come to you instead of you chasing the race. So I think that's what we're going to see now. We're seeing some of the gaps develop. We're going to see very, very good stints coming out of the pits from here onwards. 46 minutes, it's all about maximizing your race pace at this point. So it's going to be a very, very interesting finish. And because Spa will always be Spa, don't be surprised from things happening in the final 20 minutes. I guarantee you there will be a shock.
This man knows, ladies and gentlemen. This man knows exactly what to expect from Spa. The final 20 minutes are always an absolute killer in this one. The amount of times I've started screaming because the leader has either crashed or disconnected with 10 minutes to go is absolutely brutal. I've got no doubt that's not going to happen here as Daniel Matos Pareto sends it up the inside. I get the feeling, was that was Grubler. So Grubler's already been into pit lane then. And there we go. So Jaco Grubler again with those tyres. I'm a little bit confused there because Matteo Prezzo went across really quickly, but then weaving his tyres like he's trying to get them warmed up, but he's not been into pit lane then. So I wonder if there's been maybe a little bit of an off for that number 21 car. But still 10 minutes left to go in the pit stop window. The battle for second place heats back up because our second place car, who was Tariq, no sorry, it was Abe Santima. Now that is a huge loss of position then. So Santima away down what looks like position 3 at the moment. Tariq Adam away ahead now, but that's a monster gap right now. It's changed now, so it's back to 1.5 seconds. So that was a bit of a strange moment there. So Santima loses out in the pit stops by going in first. Tariq Adam then comes in later and jumps him by around about 2 seconds. So Tariq Adam up into that P2 now, and Abe Santima deposed down into P3. The question is that 8 second gap that they had to George Boothby going to have any time taken out of it? That will be an interesting one. What can Luke Whitehead do now? Because he's now 8.6 seconds behind your race leader, and for me that's a shocker here because that's Boothby's in the pits. That's probably why the timing's a little bit off there. So we say if Luke Whitehead is 8.6 seconds behind your race leader, that's almost certainly going to put him in second place there. And then I remembered exactly what I am saying. So final pit stops coming through just now. We've only got 2 cars that haven't pitted at the moment in the top 10. That is going to be Luke Whitehead and Alexander Kuznetsov, who still have to pit just now. But again, fantastic to Pello to see all of these different strategies play out and in such an intricate way here.
Yes, for sure. And like we've seen with Adam Santima and Tariq Adam, how powerful the overcut is. We don't usually see drivers try and play the overcut. We tend to see an undercut, which is where you try and pit before the driver in front of you and get out on fresher tires and try to make up the gap. But what we saw work for Tariq Adam in this case was to go longer, where you let the car pit and you do a longer stint. So it's interesting to see how the different strategies play out. Now, what we're going to see coming out is maybe the gaps will get smaller and then it will be an all-out push for the next 42 minutes. But what I love about this race is you can tell it's just simmering up. There's something about to happen. You've just put that big pot of stew on the stove and it's just simmering up, and you can hear the flavors, you can hear the sounds. Everything is coming together nicely. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to log on. Stick with us for the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship round 6 Spa-Francorchamps. Trust me, the final 20 minutes are gonna give something. I'm not cursing it, I'm telling you what's gonna happen.
Are you trying to compare a race here to a Poiki, to Pello?
Of course, why not? Why not?
It's bubbling away very nicely in the backyard, just ready to go. It'll be ready in about 25 minutes time when we get the beers out. And of course, drivers not able to join us in that until they're actually across the line. Although one man who might be able to do that is Luke Whitehead, because he is in a very commanding position just now. But again, it's short-lived because he still has to take a pit stop. But I'm sure he'll enjoy, on paper, being ahead of everyone else just now. Boothby, though, back to 8.2 seconds ahead of Tariq Adam. Tariq Adam now 1.2 seconds ahead of Santima, but that gap's starting to come down slightly. Cody Sherritt back up into P4. That is a banging result just now. Again, we'll wait to see where Luke Whitehead comes out. I believe Whitehead will come out in P4. But let's see. Then you've got Christian Fencer. He'll be in P5, potentially, probably P6. And then Jimmy Holm in 7th. Then you've got Sasha Vassner. But Luke Addison, your 4th place in championship driver right now that we're watching at the moment, down there in 9th position. However, for me, the big news is a stellar result right now for our driver down there in 10th position, Ronaldo Bersma, who I think it might be our first time seeing up into the top 10, because Ronaldo at the moment, if I'm right in saying here, he's not even in the top 15. So a fantastic performance from that Genisus Esports Racing Club driver.
Yeah, fantastic performance. And that's what we've emphasized so much in this championship, that there are so many races to go and we have a mix of different circuits with different characteristics. So a driver's strengths and weaknesses will be exposed throughout the season. If Ronaldo Bersma can maintain this, it'll be a fantastic result for him. And sometimes, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again, sometimes you need to be boring, so we don't talk about you in commentary, but we just see you gaining position. And that's what he's been doing so well this race. He's in P10 right now and we've hardly ever spoken about them this race. So that's what he's doing, keeping to himself. He's driving within himself. He's not putting any pressure on himself, but it is bearing fruit, because right now he's got a comfortable advantage to Lindrup in 11th of 10.7 seconds. He just needs to maintain, possibly go forward, but as it stands right now, he's a shoe-in for a top 10 finish.
A bad day goes from bad to worse. Sound the trumpets though. For Henry Meyer, drive-through penalty after speeding in the pit lane, automatically assigned by the game. You hate to see it. Goes into the pits, and I get the feeling that might be his day done and dusted, unless he is in the middle of his pit stop and has just got it on the way in. But it's usually not assigned until the way out, and I think that driver, well no, he is going again, so he has got it, but he's going to have to come through the pit stop, or rather come through the pits once again. So Henry Meyer getting a drive-through penalty down in 14th position, but we are watching this battle for 4th and 5th position here. Luke Whitehead and Cody Sherritt. This for me is going to be the cherry on top, I think, for Genisus Esports, given that Luke Whitehead has been fighting so hard for this championship right now. Luke Whitehead in the lead of the championship, and for all intents and purposes, this Ferrari right behind him of Cody Sherritt is monstering the times right now. I would not be surprised to see a move on the Kemmel Straight here to Pello.
This is that Poiki I was telling you about. You see, I told you something was slipping and something is coming along. But you see, it's all about your exit right out of here. The exit you get out of La Source, because then it is foot flat all the way to the end of the Kemmel Straight, and we definitely will see a move. I think they're close enough, unless something will happen, because we've seen a few spins right at the top of Radion. But if Cody Sherritt can maintain his position, he's close enough, he is in the slipstream, we're definitely going to see a move. You can see he's already tried to set it up, he's already looking to the outside, he's fully within. There he goes, down the inside into the braking zone, but brilliant defending there from Luke Whitehead to hold his position, braking late but not compromising his line. That's brilliant defense, it's brilliant attack, it's all around brilliant driving right there.
Yeah, showing exactly why he's leading the championship just now, putting that Lamborghini exactly where it needs to be. But again, what we're noticing, that Lamborghini after the pit stop here, perhaps maybe on cooler tyres, just not able to get them up to speed as quickly as the McLaren and the Ferrari. We're seeing Jimmy Holm rising up the order. Luke Addison would have been rising up the order if it wasn't for that spin. We still never found out what actually happened with that spin at the top of Radion and halfway down the Kemmel Straight here. We'll try and double check on what happened there. But Cody Sherritt here for Genisus Esports then. 36 minutes still left to go in this 6 rounds of the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship, putting all the pressure on your championship leader right now, Luke Whitehead. 0.4 of a second separating 4th and 5th position just now, but it's George Boothby that's the man of the moment. Although, and I'm going to put a big although just now, you were absolutely spot on when you said to Pillow about this being a pressure cooker, a pot boiling away, getting up to temperature. Look at that gap now. Tariq Adam now just 7.8 seconds behind. That gap was come down by about 0.8 of a second. We'll wait and see if it comes down even more, or if it's a blip. It's still around there just now, so there could be life for Tariq Adam in that chase for the race win here just now. But Cody Sherritt still in this battle for 4th position. The run down to La Source yet again on lap number 23 here. in Belgium. And the drivers looking very, very comfortable there, well and truly in the rhythm. 45 seconds left to go in the pit stop cycle just now. I think we might have lost Sabine Schut from the race, currently 2 laps down at the moment in that number 14 car. I tell a lie, can quite obviously see that on the mini-map there coming down towards the final chicane. Is going to have to jump into the pits just now. But what is Cody Sherritt going to do? Coming along the Kennel Straight here, ducks into the slipstream then of Luke Whitehead. He's gaining, but he's not close enough to have a look into Les Combes. Decides to leave it for another lap here just now. And indeed, we do have our final pit stops coming in at the moment. So everybody jumped into the pits. They are going to have that done during that 20-minute window, so nobody's going to get penalised for that, so that's fantastic to see here. But this is a very, very interesting little battle here. You get the feeling that Cody Sherritt is doing what Tariq Adam was trying to do to Abe Santima, just apply that pressure step by step by step by step. However, I honestly, Tapil, can't see Luke Whitehead crumbling under the pressure. However, stranger things have happened here tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And isn't that what's happened so far this season, where we think a driver's comfortable and then we start to see them lose pace? I think we saw it particularly at the Hungaroring in round 4, where we saw some drivers struggle with their tires towards the end of their stints. So if you can put pressure but you can take care of your tires, this race might come to you, because we have seen drivers struggling with tires at the end of races, especially in long races like a 90-minute race. We tend to see drivers struggle in the last 10-15 minutes with tire degradation, and they are super slow in that final 10-15 minutes. So that is a tactic that you might want to use if you're someone who's close. For example, if you're Cody Sherritt and you're this close to Luke Whitehead, you might start to think maybe you can ease off for a bit, let them use up all their tires, or put pressure and force them to drive in a way that is uncomfortable, and that's not good for their tire degradation and tire wear. Then you'll see the benefits towards the end of this race.
Another factor that Luke Whitehead and both Cody Sherritt is going to have to factor in is the fact of traffic. You've got Jaco Grobler just ahead in that number 23 McLaren, ahead of Luke Whitehead just now. I think actually he's as soon as I said that, I've just realised that he immediately jumped on the brakes at the source and moved to the side, so he's already behind them. So you can safely ignore that entire line of conversation from myself, because it is no longer relevant. You can see the 14 of Sabine Schut just leaving from pit lane just now as they head down into Les Combes as well. Coming up to our final half hour of the race, that gap between George Buffy and Tariq Adam has gone back up to 8.6 seconds, so any excitement, any drama that I thought was going to happen may have just subsided. However, it is still absolutely kicking off right now with Luke Whitehead and Cody Sherritt just now, 0.6 of a second between those two as they come round Bruel on lap number 24. And again, if you're Cody Sherritt here, it is just about keeping that pace up. We saw what happened to Luke Addison under pressure. We saw what happened to now who else was in the Lamborghini, Kuznetsov, under pressure and getting very, very twitchy, just pushing that car a little bit too hard here. And I think that's exactly what Cody Sherritt will be wanting to happen to Luke Whitehead in that Veloce Vexed car.
Yeah, for sure. And it's all about pressure at this point. It's all about putting pressure, because one thing you have to pay attention, and it's so difficult to convey to someone who's never driven these cars, is as you're braking, you want to keep your car as solid a platform as possible. And what that means is you don't want to be too aggressive on the brakes, because that pushes your weight to the front and then your rear gets light, and that's why we tend to see a lot of spins in the braking zones. So you want to keep your car as stable a platform as possible. Don't shift the weight too much. That's why you tend to see some drivers, they will prefer braking earlier, so they're not, as they go into the apex, they're not on the nose of the car, so to speak. But what we're seeing here is Cody Sherritt making up good, very, very good time under the braking there. Let's see how much time, if he can brake that effectively as well, heading into La Source. if I'm driving, I tend to brake a little bit earlier heading into La Source, just to give myself a bit of pace coming out, because the priority here is getting the pace going out. And as you can see, as I was saying, that Cody Sharrett getting a very decent exit. He's much closer than he's been over the previous 2 laps, heading into Eau Rouge, up into Radion, onto the Camel Straight. He's fully within the slipstream, and this is a very dangerous position for Luke Whitehead, because the Camel Straight is long, and if you have a car within your slipstream, it is very difficult to defend. As we see Cody Sharrett start to pull to the inside, not close enough, about a car length just behind. Again, brilliant defense from Luke Whitehead. Again, we're starting to see the strength of that Lamborghini, how strong they are under the braking, something that we saw in the previous rounds of this championship, but that seems to be the inherent strength of the Lamborghini, is its stability under braking, and just how far you can push the braking into the corner to trail brake, and then you can get a decent exit going out.
We're about to find out how much further Luke Whitehead can push the abilities of that car and himself just now, because you've got to say Cody Sharrett pushing him to within an inch of his racing life here at Spa just now. Half an hour that car has got to do some sort of damage control right now. Needs to get some good points here for the championship, certainly leading this championship. And I believe at the moment, and just looking at the points, with George Boothby taking a win here and Luke Whitehead finishing down in 4th position, given that we've already, we've still got a drop round to factor in. If it doesn't put George Boothby ahead tonight, I think it's still going to be far too close to call into the championship, given that the difference in points is going to be something like 17 points. So I think that as they stand just now, just doing some very quick mental arithmetic in my head, I think it's still enough for Luke Whitehead to retain the championship, as long as he stays in this position here by just 2 points. If he goes into 5th position and then gets that'll be 15 points, I believe that is for 5th position, or maybe it's 15 points for 5th. No, sorry, 18 points for 5th position. So even if he loses this, he still should be okay by 2 points. It's if he gets put down to P6, that's when the real issue is going to come. And at the end of the day, it is just one race. It's not like Luke Whitehead is having an absolute stinker here. We're just enjoying playing with all the permutations, as there is a move for positional. Luke Addison tries to hold it around the inside there, but that is dogged determination there from Sasha Vassner. Holds it up into the chicane there. They're still side by side as they come out the chicane, but Luke Addison gets it done on the run down to La Source. The Mercedes is going to try and dip back into the toe here. This is getting a little bit fighty now, as it's all going to come to a head along the Camel Straight. That Mercedes has got the grunt on the Ferrari, but the Ferrari gets a sneak ahead just now. Luke Addison up into P8 just now, but they're on the run down through Eau Rouge and then up through the climb through Radion as well, and it's all going to be on this Camel Straight. Watch for fireworks at the ends of this straight here on the entry to Le Combe. The Mercedes poised, locked and loaded, and this is about to get very fighty indeed. Already the Mercedes thinks about moving out, but I'll tell you what, that Ferrari has absolutely done it. Any chance that the Mercedes had there is kind of away there, and unless it's going to be a lunge, as Sasha Vassner gets a drive-through penalty, and that is going to be automatically assigned from the game. I didn't see anything from the stewards there. That usually results in a time penalty. It's a drive-through penalty for Sasha Vassner. That is a huge hole to Pello at this stage in the race. 27 minutes left to go. I mean, that is you pretty much out of the top 10.
Yeah, you've got to give it up at that point. And I actually think it might be for track limit infringement right at the top of Eau Rouge. It's a very easy position to cut the line, and you do gain an advantage, unfortunately, if you do cut the line there. So probably that's what triggered the drive-through penalty. But as you can see, once again, if you look at this rivalry here between Manuel and Kuznetsov, again, you can see the Lamborghini of Kuznetsov just being so much better under braking. Yes, the Ferrari can make up time a bit on the straights, and it can make up a bit of time on corner exit, but the Lamborghini makes up a lot of its advantage is going into the corners, just how well you can push the braking of that Lamborghini. We're seeing brilliant drives, and again, this is what happened in the previous race as well, David, when you weren't here, is we saw some gaps between drivers, but with the drivers that were close to each other, they could challenge each other for multiple laps at a time, and they could stay close to each other for a very, very long time. So I believe without any hazard or crazy spin or contact that takes someone out of the race, the guys that are close to each other right now can actually maintain this position for a very long time to come.
Just watching George Boothby out in the lead of this race, then I think any worry that he had that he was getting caught by Tariq Adam has been wiped away on a brow from George Boothby. He is firmly in the lead with 25 minutes left to go. Tariq Adam in second place there, but again, that is a great result for Tariq ahead of Abe Santima in third position, and another fantastic position result for Abe if that is how it finishes. Luke Whitehead still having to deal with all this pressure here from Cody Sher. The gap now down to, or up to, about 0.6 of a second. Luke, you did say that to Pello just a couple of laps ago when you watched Cody kind of back off a little bit and then have another go, get really, really close to Luke again, and then if it doesn't work, he'll pull back again. So again, I think tyre management here, and maybe a little bit of giving Luke Whitehead a little bit of false hope and hoping that he trips himself up here.
Yeah, for sure, and that's a dare I say, a tactic that tends to work really, really well in races like this. You know, as the stints goes on, you know, these guys have been driving now for more than an hour. You get tired. So what usually happens is you start to make the uncharacteristic mistakes. You start to brake a little bit later. You miss your braking points, or you don't maintain your racing line as well as you have in the race so far. So what happens for a guy that's chasing like Cody Shart, if you sit back just a bit, you'll start to see different parts of the circuit where the driver in front is maybe not as good as they were. Maybe they're slower on exit, or they're not taking the perfect line. Then you'll start to see the gaps. Then you know, once you start attacking, where your advantage is and where you can maximize on that deficit or that surplus in pace. So it is a very, very good technique or tactic that tends to work when you're attacking someone, to just sit back, not too far so that you lose touch with them, but just maybe just like we see the gap here at 0.8 of a second. That's a very good gap. So you're far enough so you can see what the driver in front of you is doing, but you're not so far that you will lose touch with them. So when you want to attack, you can attack, and you might actually have the advantage once you do. So this is something we love to call racing IQ in the racing world, where drivers are thinking on their feet, they're analyzing everything around them. They're not only driving their car, but they're driving their competitor's car as well.
And that is a great point there. Racing etiquette, racing awareness, racing IQ, as you were saying there, is such a crucial skill to develop in your performance, in your career as a sim racer. And it's something, and I hate to keep banging on about it, but it's something that these community events will absolutely teach you so very, 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 very quickly. You know, that ability to be around other drivers. It's all very well being the fastest driver on a time trial or a leaderboard. That's wonderful. And if that's your thing, awesome stuff. You go for it. But that doesn't necessarily equate to you being a fast racing driver. That doesn't necessarily equate to, you know, you being able to hack it in a field of 20 drivers. You're going to get bounced about like a pinball unless you drive smart, unless you know where you're putting the car, unless you know when to attack and when to just hold your position. And these are all things that racing in communities like this, week in, week out, will teach you on a very, very quick level. You know, you can spend as much money on all the setups you want, but the biggest way to improve your performance is race with other people, and especially race with people that are better than you. I struggled with so long as a sim racer the idea that it was okay to be worse than other drivers, because as long as you're always on that Kaizen mentality, that improvement cycle, that constant review and improve and then execute and then review, you know, that whole thing of just going round and round and round and making these gradual gains every single time out, that's where it all comes from. Because we see drivers like George Boothby and Luke Whitehead and we think, oh my god, they're aliens, they're so fast, you know, I'll never be as fast as them. What we don't see is the years of work that they've put in, the amount of time that they are on simulators, that just, driving and grinding and practicing and doing setups, and I'll come to that in a second. What a move right the outside. Unfortunately, brakes seem to have been an issue there for Nicolas Manuel. He tried, it was a bold attempt, it was a glorious attempt, and unfortunately it went down in flames. He'll get away with it, no harm, no foul, and he would have got away with it actually if we hadn't have actually watched that happen live on air. So unlucky, Nicholas. Better luck next time, as Cody Sherritt goes very, very, very wide around double gauche there. Just going back to the whole thing about other drivers being better than you, it is the quickest way to to improve yourself and to level up. Because if you race with drivers who you're better than or you're faster than, you're not really going to learn anything or anywhere near as much as if you're around drivers that are faster and you watch them and you analyse and you compare what they're doing to what you're doing. That's how you learn, and you learn in super, super fast time, Sapello.
Well said, David. Well said. And I think that's what it takes, to be the best. You need to have the humility to accept and see where you're not the best, who's faster than you, where you're slower, where you can improve. And that's what tends to separate the good guys from the really good guys and the really good guys from the great guys, is the ability to be humble and introspect and see your shortcomings. And that's what makes these guys so good. They see their shortcomings, they see where they're lacking, so to speak, and they put countless amounts of hours and effort into improving. Like I said, I tend to sit in with these guys as they're going through practice, and you'll often hear whoever's streaming at the time, or you'll often hear some of their friends asking them, where's your advantage? And you'll hear them say, I struggle with this corner so much, or this is not my favorite sector because I struggle with the acceleration out of here, or I struggle with the control. And it's that level of humility where you see your shortcomings, you see where the faster guys make up their time, and you start to learn from them. So you're absolutely spot on with that analysis, David, that what it takes to be the best is challenging yourself, putting yourself next to people who are faster than you, but you're willing to learn from them. You're not disheartened by the fact that there is someone faster. You're actually motivated by that going forward. So that is what these guys are doing. That's what the Kaizen Championship is all about. Those incremental steps that lead to greater effect, that lead to the sum of the parts. It's greater than the total of the individual parts. It's all about the small gains, the small steps, the continuous improvement. You never stop learning. You're never too good to learn. You're never perfect. There is always room to improve, and that's what we're seeing from a lot of these drivers. I see here in the chat as well, Christian Fenter getting a lot of love by people saying he has improved so much since joining the Genisus Esports racing team, and that's what we want to see. In the same way that I've always maintained in this championship as well, that my thing is all about improving every week as I do this commentary. That's what this championship is about. Improving every single time you get in that seat, and making sure that you're not only enjoying yourself, but you're also learning going forward.
100%, absolutely 100% on that, Sapello. And I think the thing is that we could honestly wax lyrical about that for the rest of the evening. I think that it's such a nice place to be, not just as a driver, but here in the commentary box as well. When you're surrounded by so much positivity, it's difficult not to get wrapped up in it, and it's difficult not to kind of enjoy it and not want to have anything else. And that's the other thing about communities, is that each community is different. Everyone will have its own little pros and cons and things like this, but I think for certainly for the Genisus Esports team, it's a team that the community, I'd never heard of them before starting this championship. I possibly would have seen them and mentioned their names before, but now it's strange as a commentator, because once you notice them and once you come on an event like this, you have this. You kind of have this love for them. You have this vested interest, because you know the names, you know the people that you've been seeing here. You speak to them on a weekly basis, and you have that sort of that built-in kind of affection for how well the team is doing and how well all of the drivers are doing. Certainly from some of the other championships that I've done as well, where there's been this focus on driver development, and as much as we're seeing in the chat from the likes of Giovanni Porzio, the outpouring of support and happiness and pride at people development, we Tapillo, we also as commentators, we share that pride as well. And when we see like Bursma getting into the top 10 for the first time this season, that whole thing of like you're just so happy for the drivers as well. And obviously, we in no way do we have any favourites or preferred drivers or anything like that, but we kind of support everyone and we share as commentators in that sort of excitement and their sort of achievements as well.
Yeah, most definitely, because I think and this is the greatest thing about the communities that we built. We start to understand the effort that it takes. Sometimes when someone tells you, I play this game for 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, you think it's unrealistic, but those are the kind of effort, that's the kind of commitment it takes to get better, to be good. I've spoken to my friends that do sim racing as well, albeit not competitively, but in their own time. And you'll hear people tell you that, hey, I keep track of my times. I have spreadsheets every day where I update how fast am I getting, where am I confident, what am I losing. And you might think it's overkill, but that's how you get better. That's how you improve on something, is that you need to track your performance and then you need to see where you're making the gains. So it's absolutely brilliant to see that from these drivers, and I think this is why this championship stands out, and it's such an impressive thing as we see Lindrup getting closer and closer to Bursma as the end of this race comes along. Like I said, in the last 15 minutes we might see some cars struggle with tire wear, and we might see them slightly getting slower per lap, and that could lead to some overtakes, as we see here Lindrup getting really, really close as we head into La Source. Let's see how well he can get his braking and then maximize on the exit out of La Source, heading up to Eau Rouge and Radion, and finally onto the Camel Straight. He is still close enough to make something count. It's all about how he takes Eau Rouge and Radion and sets himself up for the overtake finally into the braking zone of the Lacombe chicane.
Yeah, I think this is one of the last battles that we're going to have out there on track just now. Lindrup getting a fantastic exit through Radion there, side by side, and I think this is going to be like taking candy from a baby for Martin Lindrup. P9 is going to be his. He's got the inside line into Lacombe there, and again, Bursma doing the better thing there, just let him have the position and try and fight it back if possible. But again, there's no point getting into to arguments over a corner when you could possibly try and get that cutback done later on in the race. But Bursma dropping down to 10th position, still an absolutely stellar performance right now for Bursma in that 22 Lamborghini. Martin Lindrup up to P9. Remember, had that the penalty earlier on, and that 27th then back up into 9th position. But we've got just under 15 minutes left to go. Quarter of an hour left to go in this race here, round 6 of the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship. Let's give you a reminder then of how the fields look at the moment. We've got 16 cars still on the fields at the moment. George Boothby in the lead of the race there by 12 seconds from Tariq Adam in second position there. Abe Santima in third, 3.8 seconds just behind Adam at the moment. Luke Whitehead, his recovery charge doesn't seem to have happened at all. That car looking firmly poised in fourth position. Cody Sherritt has now dropped away. I think the tyres have maybe gone from that Ferrari. 1.8 seconds off the back of Luke Whitehead. Then it is Christian Fenter in sixth position in that 16 McLaren, and then we go down to the homing missile himself, Jimmy Home, in that number 1 Ferrari in 7th position. Up into 8th position is Luke Addison after that time penalty and that bizarre spin, as we saw that move for Martin Lindrup in P9. Then we move on to P10, Ronaldo Bursma for Genisus Esports Racing Club in the 22 Lamborghini. Who was that off in the background there? That was Jakob Grubler there. Alexander Kuznetsov for Send Help Motorsports in the 24 Lamborghini in P11. Then it's Nicholas Manuel in the number 15 Ferrari in 12th position. Henry Meyer, we saw a little bit worse for wear in the number 6 Ferrari in 13th position. Jaco Grobler getting out of the way in 14th position in that 23 McLaren. And then it's Daniel De Matos Preto just rounding out the field there in the 21 Lamborghini, and a couple laps down Sean Schute, in the logistical nightmare racing. Unfortunately, I've been calling Sean Sabine for some reason all night. I've got no idea, getting mixed up with a completely different driver. Right. Oh no, Nicholas Manuel for Genesis Esports goes wide at Eau Rouge and Radion, and it's a drive-through penalty. That's a brutal way to end your race there. Thankfully, I think we'll still hold on to that 12th position because Henry Meyer is another lap down just now. About 11 minutes left to go in this race here, Sapello. And realistically, I think for the majority of the drivers, maybe not for Nicholas Manuel, he'll want to try and take this position here from Kuznetsov, but for the rest of the field, I think the race is pretty much just about bringing it home at this point now.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's because of how well the drivers drove in the first and the earlier part of the second stint. This is what you want to set up. This is the ideal scenario. This is the ideal position where you start so aggressively. You start with a really good race pace, and what that does is when everything settles down towards the end, you are with an advantage. You've opened the gap to the car that's behind. As we see a change of position between Manuel and Kuznetsov, I actually saw Kuznetsov in the corner of my eye that he did actually put too much throttle, and we saw the rear of the car just go light and go sideways. But those are the uncharacteristic mistakes that come in. Like I said, in the final 10 minutes, as a driver, you're really, really tired. The concentration levels are immense to still be focused and be 100%. That's why it's so advantageous. For example, a driver like George Boothby with a 13-second gap is that he can drive within himself. He doesn't have to put that much pressure on himself. He can sort of relax, even if his race pace drops by half a second a lap. As long as he can maintain the gap to the guy behind, that's good. It just allows him the extra time to think, the extra kind of air to breathe, so to speak, because if you're stressed, if you're clenching up, you start to make more and more mistakes. So you want to be as relaxed as possible for this final 9 minutes, just to secure your position and avoid making any crucial mistakes that could result in you dropping out from this race.
Yeah, and for sure. And I think for Kuznetsov as well, he would have been just yeah, fine, you take that position because I'm going to get it back from you on the aggregate anyway as you take that drive through. The other thing for that is that number 15 car. He's got about, I think, 30 seconds before he's got to worry about that number 6 of Henry Meyer. Yeah, 42 seconds, so doesn't really have to worry about that car behind him whatsoever. But it's a very long pit lane here at Spa, and will ruin around about 45 seconds of your race. Back to Cody Sherritt though as we enter the final 10 minutes of the race. We're now 8.5 minutes left to go in round 6 here. Cody Sherritt in 5th position, chasing down Luke Whitehead, has taken another half a second in, so that gap's starting to come down again. And again, this could have just been a case of Cody Sherritt wanting to lull that Lamborghini into a false sense of security and try and push it a little bit more towards the end here, or maybe just that car coming back to him as he gets towards the end of it there, as we see Luke Whitehead getting past some lap traffic there. That is the number 55 of Luke Whitehead just getting past, I believe, Nicholas Manuel as he comes out of pit lane. So Genesis Esports driver, it is Nicholas Manuel there in the number 15 Ferrari. So I would imagine he will very quickly, yep, great to see that, great team awareness there, and does everything he possibly can to help Cody Sherritt get round there. But with just around about 3 laps left to go now, George Boothby looking very, very comfortable in the lead of this race there. Tariq Adam in 2nd position just behind him, and it looks like that is how it is going to finish tonight. Certainly none of the gaps in the top 3 and making any headway whatsoever, but we still watch with bated breath on this fight for P4. You get the feeling, you get the idea that Luke Whitehead might have a chink in his armour in that Lamborghini there. Again, when he's under pressure, the car starts squirreling about a little more than you'd like to see. That gap definitely looks to be coming down, definitely looks to be a lot closer than 1.5 seconds, but looks can be deceiving because that's still exactly what it is as they come through towards that left-hander at Blanchimont with just under 7 minutes left to go. Another absolute banger of a race here tonight here to Pello. Really filled with action and excitement all the way through here. But again, unlike Donington from the sounds of it last week, it's been a different affair in terms of how close the racing has been.
Yeah, most definitely. And this is the funniest thing, because often than not, how we tend to describe races as viewers, the racing community, is we tend to say that the best race are the ones with overtakes, right? We want to see overtakes, and that's how we judge the excitement factor of a race. But the more you understand racing and the more you understand what goes into a race, you start to derive pleasure from a tactical race, right? Where there might not be an overtake, but you've had two cars that were within a second of each other for 10 laps. So that's what's so interesting about this championship, is because there are so many different tracks. We've got 12 tracks with 12 different characteristics. We're moving all the way from medium to high downforce circuits like Silverstone and Suzuka to low downforce circuits like Monza. You're going to see the way things pan out. You're going to see strategy come into play. You're going to see driving style come into play. You're going to see, for example, as we've already spoken about, our championship leader, someone like Luke Whitehead, not being the best driver on the day. His best position being P4, and while that is still a great position, but when it's coming from someone who's been dominant in a championship, it raises your eyebrows and it has you thinking about what's happening, what's different, what's changing. So I think that's what I love about this championship. It's so diverse, so many circuits. We're going to see change-ups, we're going to see shake-ups, and as we've seen as well with the points standing so far, a driver can have one good race and that brings them into the mix of the championship standing once again. As we were doing the closing last week after the racing Donington after round 5, we noticed that there were people who jumped up 4-5 places just because of one good finish in that race. So it's never over, especially in a long championship. You just want to score points, you want to be consistent. So for a driver like Luke Whitehead today, yes, he's not on the podium once more, but even with a race where he isn't at his 100%, he's not the most confident, he's not driving at his best, he still managed to come home with a respectable and commendable P4, and that's a lot of points to get in a championship going forward. And these are the kind of races you look back to where I was not my best, but I still got a very good haul of points.
100%, and again, it's the aggregate over the championship as a whole that's what separates the good drivers from the great drivers that we see from experience in these championships. That's why you see the likes of Luke Whitehead, George Boothby, Tariq Adam, Luke Addison and Abe Santima floating towards the top of that championship just now. It's about that consistency and about being able to repeatedly get good results or keep yourself out of trouble, whichever is more relevant to the races at hand. But as we come into the final 3.5 minutes into this race, then I believe we are on the penultimate lap just now. I think we'll get time for possibly actually 2 more after this just now, because your race leader there, George Boothby, just coming through Bruel at the moment, into Double Gauche just now as we're watching Luke Whitehead coming through Bruel and then through the rest of the circuit. But this is your race leader. Let's take a little bit of a moment to Pello to talk about George here, because as usually is the case, we don't get an awful lot of opportunity to talk about a race leader that we don't see, and more often than not, if you don't hear or see anything about a race leader, it's been a very, very good performance for them.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of race you want as a race leader. You do not want pressure from the guy in P2. You do not want to have to continuously check in your rearview mirrors. You just want to maintain that gap, lead from the start, get ahead and just drive comfortably. And I've mentioned it before in this stream as well tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is it's something that they say you drive within yourself. And what that means is you're not driving by putting yourself under pressure. You're not pushing the limits of grip. So you're not risking a spin, you're not risking contact with the wall. When you're driving within yourself, you know, if I can take this corner at 200 kilometers an hour, for example, you're going to take it with 180, because that just allows you to be more measured, more aware, and just reduce the risk of a crash. And I think that's what George Boothby's done so brilliantly tonight. I think that's one of the best races we've seen from him so far this season, in the way he's controlled his pace. Even when we actually doubted his pace, we started to see the likes of Tariq Adam and Adam Santima get closer to him. He'd just be there or thereabout for 2-3 laps, but then we'd start to see the gap elongate again and increase, because he's found his pace, he's driving within himself, and he's maintaining that consistency lap after lap after lap. And that's a brilliant race. And another shout out I want to give to the drivers, to one of the drivers tonight, is actually Luke Addison. You know, we saw the early 10-second time penalty and we were so confused what was happening there, and then we saw the spin that we didn't understand how we got there. And I actually surmised at the time that I think he might be confused as well as the driver, but he's picked it up, and we actually doubted whether he would actually be able to maintain his top 10 finishing, and there he is comfortably in P8. That will be a good haul of points for him, and sometimes that's all you need, a good recovery drive. That's actually a very good drive. And if those mistakes had a major hit on his confidence, the finishing of P8 and the way he's driven after those incidents will boost his confidence very much going into the next race.
It's a huge boy to see, despite having massive troubles in the race, as you've pointed out, for Luke Addison, to keep on going and to still get a reasonably large haul of points from that. So yeah, again, a very spirited performance from Luke Addison, keeping his foot in right until the end, and looks very comfortable in that 8th position just now. But it's all about this man here, because it looks like that is potentially going to be it. It's going to be touch and go whether we get to the line. I don't think we are. It looks like then round number 6 then, as the clock counts down to 0, George Boothby takes the win here for the Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship, round 6 here at Spa. A brilliant performance there, and let's just pretend that didn't happen. A little bit of a virtual repair build there for George Boothby, but a brilliant performance there for Tariq Adam into 2nd place. Let's hope he avoids that stricken car of George Boothby across the line there. But Abe Santema here, 3rd position, and I believe for Abe that is equal his best performance so far in the championship just now. It is his best performance here just now. Brilliant performances. Luke Whitehead sent it into the wall there. Cody Sherritt comes across the line in 5th position. What a race there for those top 5. But Christian Fencer pointed out in YouTube chat there for the remarkable improvement over the season, and comes across the line in that number 16 McLaren. Brilliant result there.
There's your favorite person, David Jimmy Holm, the homing missile, coming home to take P7 after a brilliant race. Didn't have to do too much, but he just did enough, kept within himself, drove brilliantly when he had to, increased his pace when he had to, slowed down when the opportunity presented itself. That's a brilliant finish. And the driver we've spoken about so far this race, Luke Addison, you know, after a difficult race so far, comes home to finish in P8. And Martin Lundrup in P9, actually a very good showing. We've seen him racing from P10, P11, so finishing P9 is actually a brilliant result. Ronaldo Boertsma, as we've spoken about before in this race, we focused on him earlier today. This is actually one of his best performances of the season so far. Measured, controlled, drove within his limits, did what he had to do to get his position, as we see Kuznetsov coming across the final corner as he turns out of the bus stop chicane, going over the finish line to finish in P10 and be a scoring member of this race. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, in the Kaizen Championship, the top 15 finishers in the race all score points. So it's not just the top 10, it is the top 15 that scores points.
Certainly is, and as if by magic, they're already well trained, our top 3, into the waiting room to have a chat with us tonight. Really enjoyed that tonight. Top position obviously goes to George Boothby. 2nd place to Tariq Adam after that fantastic stuff, and then Abe Santima in that third position, the season best so far for Abe just now. And Tapelo, if you had to pick one of those three drivers, which one of those three would you most like to speak to tonight?
You know what? Look, it's going to sound like the obvious choice, but I'd really like to speak to our racer, George Boothby, just to get his understanding and just to see his mentality on how he went about that race. Because make no mistake, driving the way he did, there's a lot of pressure, but it takes a certain kind of special person to come out of it in the way he did.
Well, let's grant that wish. We'll come on to George Boothby very, very shortly. I think what we'll possibly do is get him into the commentary box just now. Tapelo, ask away.
George, fantastic race, my friend. Brilliantly done. We were in awe throughout the whole broadcast. Tell us what went into your mind as from the beginning as you start the race, because you actually maintained your lead from beginning to end. What was going through your mind in that first 10-15 minutes of your stint?
Hey, so yeah, this track is like really, really, really good for the McLaren. So like, I want to dedicate a lot of this win to the kudos BOP. But so I knew that I was gonna have, you know, unless something stupid happened, like if I just drove into a wall or something or spun, I knew I was gonna have a strong race. So we got pole, and the struggle is, as we all know, with Spa off the line, it's like you got the whole run-up Eau Rouge, and anyone who's behind you on the grid can get a slipstream, and then it's always like 3 or 4 wide into the top corner, and carnage happens. But I think this is the first time I've ever had a front row start at Spa and not been attacked into that corner, because I think Tariq off the line, he had a little bit of an overlap going into Eau Rouge, but he backed out of it. And then that meant the whole rest of the field had to back out because they were behind him. So it just meant I could just get away. And I had like almost a second gap coming out of the top corners. So I was just really, really fortunate that he took it a bit easier, I guess, and safer. And then it was just head down, do the laps, and don't make mistakes. And that's like when I find that's when it's most easy to make mistakes, when you sort of lose focus, because it's a long race as well. And it's very easy to mess everything up here. So but I kept my focus. I'm streaming it all, and I've got like a Twitch chat, so there I'm able to chat and do things and keep occupied. So my brain is ticking, and yeah, I'm able to just stay consistent. I love this track and bring it home.
No, for sure. And I think that's what we started to pick up, just how cool you were, cooler than a bucket of ice, I'd love to say. But I want to ask, as a driver in that position, you have a multi-second gap, 5, 6, 10 seconds, whatever the gap may be. And like you said, you use your Twitch stream to kind of keep you active. What gets to me is, because something I usually struggle with is how not to make mistakes. And I want to ask you, what's your secret to not making mistakes when you're in that position?
Yeah, because it's always easy to beat a chasing car, because you got a target, you lock it onto him, and you push in. And I don't know, when you're in a defensive position, that's when, like I say, the pressure can mount and you can start making mistakes. So I think it all matters about the first few laps, like the opening to your stint. If you can keep it cool, maybe not be absolutely maximally on the pace, like you might be a temp or two off your best times, but if you can just do those clean first few laps, get the confidence, and then as long as you're not being attacked as well, because if you're being attacked all the time, then you got to settle in for the long race, right? It's going to be a tough one. But if you can hold a good gap, set some good laps, then your confidence builds, and then it's kind of like a long quali run where you're just always finding those little micro bits of time here and there on every corner, and you're just like, I don't know, you just get into that rhythm where you just keep going quicker and quicker, and that's what you want to try and get into. But yeah, it's just about easing into it. If you have a bad start to the stint, maybe a few mistakes, maybe forget a braking zone and you're struggling in one corner, then it just domino effects, and it can just make you so slow and unpredictable, and then you're the head of a train behind you. So yeah, that's why I try and focus on when I start at the front. Just first few laps, nail it, and then we go from there.
No, perfect. Well done. Just quickly for us, Nürburgring next. How are you feeling? Are you confident? Do you think you can replicate this kind of performance?
Ooh. Nürburgring's a tough one. The McLaren's good there. Don't get me wrong, it's a good car there, but I know the Lamborghini is probably the quickest there, and Luke Whitehead's in that car, so it's going to be a little difficult, but you never know, especially if there's any mixed weather or anything like that. We'll do our best, and maybe we can mount a charge and try and close down that gap in the championship.
Well, Mr. Boothby, thank you so much. You've driven a brilliant race. Congratulations on the win, and we look forward to seeing you race next week.
Hey, thank you so much, guys. Cheers.
Excellent stuff. Great stuff there, Tapello. Absolutely nailed those questions, my friend. Knocked that one out of the park. I wonder if we're going to hear just as much insight from Tariq. I think he's going to be, safe to say, delighted with that performance, of course, representing Genisus Esports. Tariq, congratulations on second place. Of course, you've pretty much had almost every place on the podium. The only one you've still got to get now, I believe, is a third place just now, but you were kind of in no man's land in that second place, weren't you?
Thanks. The start was quite tough. Obviously, I started on second in P2, but I had a bad run up. I actually had a good start. I had a bit of overlap, but I didn't want to take the risk with George and cause an incident, so I actually had to back out. And then that just made me vulnerable down the straight, and then Abe's and Timber got past me. And then, I was just stuck from there in the first stint in the dirty air, and my tires dropped off quite fast with the understeer. But I think he, from the pit stop phase, I think he made a mistake. Lost some time, so I kind of got the position to the pit stops, and then I was able to just run away in the second stint. So I was happy with that, but not the best.
Let's go back to your first stint there, because as you said, we were enthralled with that fight that you had with Abe. But from certainly my limited viewing of you, Tariq, you've never seemed to be the driver that just sends it in or makes a rash move. You're always very calculated. And was that more of the same today here? Were you just sort of waiting for your point? And how badly were the tyres dropping off in that dirty air?
Yeah, 100%. So at the start when I was behind Abe, I wasn't trying to push because I wanted to save the tyres. And I knew normally I have less drop-off than Abe from the previous races. So I was expecting to have more pace through the stint. But that just didn't happen because I was in the dirty air and I was just understeering and I was actually using more tyres than him. So I actually had more drop-off. I just didn't have the pace in the dirty air from there. But luckily in the pit stops I was able to make something happen.
And obviously, championship-wise, a huge haul of points for yourself there. Bringing your gap towards Luke Whitehead even closer now, puts you really firmly in contention to the final couple of rounds here. Off to Nürburgring next time out. What's the thought process for yourself, Tariq? Are you going to be going for the position? Are you going to be fighting, or are you going to be with one eye on that championship and the points?
Well, I'm definitely going to give it everything. Obviously, the aim every time is to get a on the podium. So if I can get a top 3 there, it'll be quite good. I know the Lambo is really fast there, so I expect Luke Whitehead to take the win there. So if I can fight George for second or third there, I think it'll be good.
Well, you kept us thoroughly entertained tonight, Tariq. Is there anybody that you want to say a thank you to tonight?
Just the team, my teammates, and you guys for putting on a good show, and the stewards in the background.
You're too kind, Tariq. Thank you so much for keeping us entertained. All the best, and we'll see you next time out at Nürburgring.
Cool, thank you.
Awesome stuff. So Tariq Adam having a chat with us from second place. Let's wrap things up though with Abe Santima. Abe, welcome into the commentary box. Congratulations on your third place. Am I right in saying that is your season best performance today?
In terms of position, yes.
So do you know, it's so rare that I actually get something right, Abe. So I'm just double checking on that one. But listen, a brilliant third place though. How was that race? Because it could have been so different. You were so close to fighting with Tariq.
Yeah. So at the start, I guess I got pretty lucky, and I got the space from Tariq. But at the pits, I moved accidentally, and then the race was basically over.
So obviously losing that race in the pit stop, I mean, a very, very frustrating affair, but how do you mentally recover from that? Because for me, I'm an absolute man-child. I'm alt F4. I'm out throwing my headset at that point and I'm done. But you obviously kept your head in the game. And what keeps you going on that point?
Well, there's always the case of maybe the other person makes a mistake, or you never know. Maybe a drive-through. You never know what's happening. You just have to keep your own pace and see what happens.
And obviously, towards the end there, it did look like you could have maybe tried to challenge for Tariq, but I wonder if the pace just sort of extended that gap a little bit. But either way, I mean, you must be delighted with a third position and getting on that podium.
Yeah, it's definitely really good because at the start I went with a little bit lower fuel, so I already knew in the second stint I was going to have less space, but so the pit stop was really unfortunate there, but yeah, it was a really good race, and yeah, there's not really more I could have done, I think.
Yeah, difficult to have anything bad to say about it. Well, congratulations on the podium, Abe. Look forward to seeing you at Nürburgring. Anybody that you want to say thank you to or say hello to tonight?
Hello, Mum.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Well, listen, Abe, thank you so much for your time tonight. Congratulations on the third place, and thanks for keeping us so entertained with that awesome fight tonight.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That wraps up another round of this incredible Genisus Esports Kaizen Championship. Firstly, a huge thank you to Pello for yourself joining me back in the commentary box. It's great to be hauled back in after my week's holiday, and you make it so enjoyable to spend these Wednesday nights with, my friends.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Like I said to you when I started this, and as the weeks go by, I could not have asked for a better co-host. You know, I think we're a well-oiled machine at this point, and it can only get better from here. So thank you so much. Your seat is always ready near me.
Oh, you guys, thanks so much. A huge thank you to our broadcast producer behind the scenes, and a huge thank you to all of the team at Genisus Esports for putting on this production and giving us all of the wonderful info that they give us. If you want to get involved, ladies and gentlemen, head over to GenisusExtreme.com and get yourself part of the Discord community, and you could be taking part in the next championship. On behalf of everybody here, we will see you later. We will see you next week at Nürburgring. Take care and stay safe.